Welcome to a special edition of Chasing Squirrels, as we have a live job post that you can apply for right now. Today's guest is Josh Dague. He is the VP of Engineering at WeFunder. WeFunder is currently looking for engineers of all levels, including junior, senior, and beyond. They prefer junior engineers with at least 1 year of professional experience. Their tech stack is React for the front end, Ruby on Rails for the back end, and a SQL database. They have thousands of companies fundraising on their site, so they need algorithms to identify and curate the best ones, as well as tools for founders to provide them with insights. Along with thousands of companies, they have tens of thousands of transactions that need handled and need help creating fun banking software to enable founders to successfully fundraise across the world. To apply at any time before, during, or after the episode, click on the link in the show notes. Depending on the platform you're currently listening on, you may need to copy and paste, or if you're driving, you can type in bit.ly/3, G as in goat, X as in xylophone, the number 7, Q as in quit, the number 4, W as in WeFunder. That will get the process started by setting up your 15-minute phone interview with your salary requirements and any additional questions you may have. And after that, we'll forward you on to Josh and the WeFunder team. Thanks, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Welcome to another episode of Chasing Squirrels. On today's episode, we have Josh Dague, and he is the VP of Engineering at WeFunder. Welcome to the episode, Josh.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So from a high level, can you kind of give a quick overview of what it is that WeFunder does for your customers?
Yeah. So if you ask our CEO, he'll tell you that we're here to fix capitalism, which is maybe a little grand and, doesn't really tell you a whole lot. So I think diving into that a little deeper, we're changing the way that investment happens in startups and small companies. We literally went and lobbied Congress to change the law almost a decade ago, but the gears of government grind slowly. So it's kind of taken a while to get to the point where, it actually starts working. But we would change the law to allow the public to invest in private companies. So that means you or I or anyone else can invest as little as $100 in companies they love or ideas that are super exciting, which is something that historically has been kind of, walled off, right? You had to be what's known as an accredited investor, which means you already have $1 million in the bank, and only VCs could invest in those most promising of companies. So what we're doing is changing that, and I think it's a really cool thing to do.
Is there actually a maximum that an individual that's not accredited can invest in startups each year?
Yes, the rules are, of course, it's government, so the rules are complex, and
you don't have to tell me they're not ideal, but they're working more towards ideal each day. I'm hoping behind the scenes.
They're complex, and to be honest, I don't even know what they are off the top of my head. But it's kind of like a sliding scale based on your income and your net worth. So basically, I think it's designed in a way to kind of protect investors. That's kind of the SEC's overarching goal, is to make sure that you don't go like blow your money on Dogecoin or whatever else is trending, and protect people kind of as they kind of dip their toes into the market.
I'm gonna steer clear of the SEC opinions so as not to go down too deep of a rabbit hole, but it is awesome in terms of like being able to invest in the companies themselves. And one of the things I saw recently was that you guys actually have YC companies on your platform as well.
Yes, it is very exciting. The most recent YC batch just had their demo day last month. And we actually got all the companies on the platform kind of giving the opportunity for the public to get into those deals that traditionally have, only VCs can get into. Which I think is it's fabulous, right? It gives. There's two things that I think are awesome about WeFunder. One is we're giving normal people the chance to kind of get in on the ground floor of these very exciting companies, and the other is we're for people who don't make it into YC or all the way down to just like a Main Street coffee shop anywhere in America, we're giving the ability for founders to raise money to chase their dreams, and I think that is. That's the fixing capitalism part that I think is super cool.
No, that is awesome. And I can say I have actually invested in a company on WeFunder, and it was actually a company that I saw on Shark Tank. So you guys have Shark Tank companies, YC companies, regular companies, you got all the things.
Yeah.
So can you kind of take us a little bit and give us some background on your engineering journey and kind of what led you to WeFunder ultimately? Were you always in startups, or were you in bigger companies, or how did your journey go?
Yeah, well, that's a long story. I got my start really, really young. In fact, my mom just sent a photo the other day that she found in an album. That's me at maybe like age 2 or something. Like in the middle of the night, had got up, found like a strand of Christmas lights, and wrapped myself around them. So in a way, it's amazing I'm still here. I didn't get electrocuted or anything. That was definitely a little scary, but I've just always been fascinated with how things work, technology, and just kind of always had like a very natural knack for it, I guess. So, got our first computer at, sometime in the mid 90s. Um, and, that was a Christmas Day thing, and had the thing set up and running before my parents could even, get the manual out to figure out how this thing hooked up. So it's just kind of it's been something that's always been really interesting to me. Got my start, writing code at age 8, and just kind of very self-taught over the years. Went to college for electronic media, which in retrospect I probably should have just gone for CS and like been done with it. I don't know what I was thinking. I think any 17 or 18-year-old doesn't really know what they're thinking or what they want to do with their life anyway.
Definitely.
And so that's maybe a whole other conversation. But I got very lucky in that when I was in college, I managed to get a student job working for the Office of Admissions at my university. And at first it was just like, we're sending out some like marketing emails, need help like writing HTML. Very quickly turned into like, oh, you can do a whole lot of other things too. And ended up building a tracking system for the kind of the journey of a prospect through the admissions office marketing efforts. It's basically a kind of glorified CRM if you take a step back and look at it, but very specifically tailored to the needs of a university admissions office. After I graduated, that actually turned into a thing, because I realized like there's this thing I've been working on for the past several years that turns out to be like something that not just my college's admissions office could use, but so could several others. So I in full of naivete, went and founded, a company to actually try to sell that product to college admissions office, and had, we'll say, a little success, but I also had no idea what I was doing. So, I was doing everything from going in, like playing salesman, giving the pitch, doing user support, and building the product. So it was both a fascinating experience and one that I think is really helpful as I've kind of gone on in my career, but
Definitely.
also amazing that I had any success whatsoever, since I had no idea what I was doing. So after a few years, that kind of like it fizzled out, as most startups do, and kind of spent a lot of time working in small companies. It's kind of the sweet spot for me, where I definitely like the autonomy and kind of freedom to do the things that are impactful and do the things that are interesting. So I've worked at several different places. One was kind of marketing for large chain restaurants at a company called Zipsy. It was an interesting job. It was definitely one of those things that's not super fulfilling, because if I help McDonald's sell more cheeseburgers, who cares? Like, maybe McDonald's do, maybe their shareholders do, but like I don't really. And it's also like I've probably done a net negative for the world, because I've sold more cheeseburger and people are getting fatter, and that's my so it was definitely not the most fulfilling thing, and I think that was a really useful learning experience in figuring out like it's important to join a company where you can feel good about the work you're doing, and can be aligned with the mission. And that's definitely something that I think I've found at companies since, and certainly here at WeFunder. So that's that's a little bit of kind of where I'm coming from. More recently, I actually moved to San Francisco in 2014, got a job with a startup here called Case Text. uh, legal informatics company, really cool, building things to help make the law more accessible and more cost effective, for lawyers. Um, and, and that's one where I actually transitioned from, joined as a senior engineer and then transitioned into leadership with that company. And definitely also a really great learning experience. Definitely owe a lot to the CEO for kind of giving me that chance. And now I'm at WeFunder, where I get to apply some of that and help us grow from where we are now to, we're looking to double the size of the team by the end of the year, which is both super exciting and terrifying.
Definitely.
Because we're at about 30 or 40 now, and the 80 is a very different company, I think, than is one that's grown, slowly.
Just hiring to 80 and training to 80 is probably enough to keep you up for a couple nights between
Yeah.
now and then. So
Absolutely.
I'm curious because a lot of engineers kind of get to a point where they've maxed out their engineering ability in terms of being a producer. And so they're like, you know what? It's comfortable being a producer. Let me solve more problems. Not everybody makes the leap to managing engineers or necessarily even wants to. And so
Yeah.
there's never a right answer. But I'm curious in terms of your journey in doing that, what were some of the things that you learned that you're carrying over to WeFunder in that process?
I mean, I think the first thing you need to know is it is like moving from, an engineering IC role to a management one. It's not just a different job, it's almost a different career. And I don't, I think you have to be very deliberate about doing that and really deciding whether or not that's the thing you want to do. Um, it definitely comes with its own set of challenges, but it also comes with its own set of rewards. And if it's something that you think you really want to do, then that's really cool. But I also think there are definitely some companies that do this better than others. But in terms of having two different tracks for advancement, where one is a management track, one is one where you stay technical. And if you're at a company that doesn't have that, I think, first decide, how do I want to advance my career? What do I want to do? And if it's not the management track, then, either fight to make that technical track happen if you're at a small company, or, find somewhere that does have that. Because at the end of the day, you're doing your coworkers a disservice if you're doing a job you hate just because you think it was the next step.
And so one of the things I wanted to touch on too and not forget was I saw on your profile or on LinkedIn or somewhere when I was looking into your background that you are a major contributor to Stack Overflow.
Yeah, that's true. I have earned 100,000 fake internet points. They sent me a coffee mug. I'm on an hourly basis, I don't know that I've come out ahead on that one, but it's a cool mug.
Hey, everybody's collecting fake internet money, so fake internet points is has to be right up there.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting. I actually I think I owe a lot of credit, to Stack Overflow in the community for helping me, especially earlier in my career, just learn new things, especially as someone who never went through a formal CS program, to learn about, the implications of Big O, or, the right data structures to use for the right problems. I was just building stuff and it worked, and that was cool. But turns out there's all this other foundational stuff that I was just kind of missing because you don't know what you don't know. And so I actually, for a very brief moment of time, had a job with a health insurance company that was not very exciting. And I think I spent 6 months there and literally did nothing, just because I was lost in the the vast sea of bureaucracy, and they just they had a seat to fill, but they didn't necessarily have the work to do. So that's kind of where I spent a lot of my time. Well, I'm going to make something of this time, and started learning. Started spending some time on Slack Overflow, and I owe a lot to the people who spent some time out of their days to help people and write answers. And I learned a lot just from looking at the popular questions. And eventually that transitioned into I know some things and I can answer some of these questions and give back to the community. And over time, I enjoyed it, and thought I'd like kind of helping people and helping them grow, which is something, in my role today is very important, right? Of helping the engineers on the team kind of level up their skills. And yeah, so it's been a while since I've really truly actively contributed. So at this point, I'm kind of like coasting on the interest of like, having already upvoted questions and getting more upvotes just from being there. But yeah, I think like I said, I really enjoyed being able to give back to the community that helped me so much.
It's entirely possible that half the people listening to this have copied and pasted your code at one point or another then.
I have copied and pasted my own code. I have literally Googled
I was going to ask that.
and started reading, and I'm like, man, this guy sounds really smart. And then I get down to the bottom, and it's me. I've even had coworkers that from many jobs ago just text me like, hey, I was Googling something, started reading, and it was you. Like, you're welcome.
That's amazing. I had started a code school or a coding boot camp in the past, and so it was like 3 years later that I was on Stack Overflow, and one of my students had written something that I used for my code. I was like, this is amazing. The internet is an amazing place.
The circle of life.
It was awesome. So I know you have a lot of hires that you mentioned. Can you kind of dive into some of the, I'm curious, what are the problems that they're really going to help be solving? And also what tech or, languages would they be working with to solve those problems?
Yeah, absolutely. And, this is something where like, honestly, it's a little embarrassing maybe, but, one thing that I think is super important is being transparent and like, I'd never want someone to show up for a job on day one and be surprised. So a way to kind of explain where we've got today is, like I said, we started lobbying Congress almost 10 years ago to change the laws around who can invest in private companies. And it's taken a long time to get to where we are today. So the code base has evolved over those years. And there are several years where it's like, trying different things and like working within the laws as they existed, even though they were not ideal. So, there's definitely some debt there that we have to pay off, which, this is maybe doing a very terrible job of like selling the opportunity to anyone who's listening, but I think it's true of any company. It's very rare that you're going to go into some place and it's going to be totally greenfield and you're working, completely free of any legacy. So, I'm just being honest about like, we have some of that. And the good news is we have a plan in place to address it. And so that's kind of where we need some of the help. The app today is a very monolithic Rails app, very traditional ERB files with, like direct access to models kind of sprinkled in. And it's evolved over the years. So as a consequence, it's kind of buggy. So our approach to fixing this is to take the Rails app we have today, turn it into a RESTful API server, and then migrate all of the front-end user-facing stuff into React and have the React client app talk directly to that API server. So it'll be a thing that's happening kind of over the course of the year, probably longer. And but I think it's very exciting because it means we have some technology choices to make, and we're kind of freeing ourselves of some of those old things, and we're in a position to decide like what is the right way to move forward. Of course, sometimes the challenge in the front end world is the answer today will change in 6 months. It's because the churn is never ending. That's kind of the one thing I've in my 2 decades of doing this. Learned that the churn is the only constant in the world of front-end development. But you make the best choices you can. So it's going to be React. I think we're looking at using Next so that we can do server-side rendering and get kind of the performance benefits that provides. And I'm genuinely excited about it because it means we're going to get to take something that's kind of old and crappy and build something that is the opposite of that.
Yeah, and help companies along the way. I feel like is the that all your effort is going towards building the companies of tomorrow, essentially.
Yeah, it definitely I sleep a lot better at night knowing I'm doing that instead of selling cheeseburgers.
Knowing that you're not selling cheeseburgers or helping attorneys.
Attorneys I spent 5 years at that job, right? And maybe I just became indoctrinated or spent too much time around attorneys, but some of them are actually kind of cool.
No, I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, people joke about it, but then when you need one, you want the
You,
best one, right?
you want a really
So
good one on your side, absolutely.
that's correct. So I'm curious in terms of the front end, and back end. Do you have them separated, or will you have them separated out into teams, or will everyone kind of be like a full stack engineer, or how do you kind of handle that situation?
Yeah, so I mean, as our engineering team is 10 people right now. So at a team of that size, you don't really get to like split things out that way. And we certainly have people who are more familiar with the back end of things, more familiar with the front end, and who work on projects in those areas. But absolutely, like, you need to be able to dive in on either side, to get things done when it's only 10 of you. I think, going forward, that's something to figure out. I think, naturally the place will probably evolve to is one where, we start getting specialized teams who focus on front end or back end or, payments infrastructure or that kind of stuff. But that'll be, I think, a natural evolution and something that, we'll figure out on the way.
That's awesome. Can you walk us through what your interview process is like?
Yeah, absolutely. And with the caveat for anyone who's listening and hopefully very excited about this is we've kind of revamped things recently and still tweaking the process, so it may change a little from what I lay out. But in general, like I'm going to make a hot take. I think data structure and algorithms questions are a waste of time. I think it's a waste of time for people who like. There's this whole cottage industry that has sprung up around,
A
cracking the coding interview
huge
and
one, huge one.
preparing for these, what amount to exams. And in what world does like, where there's this whole cottage industry of people preparing you to answer these very specific questions? What does asking those questions really get you as a company? That this person can study for a test. Cool. Like, if you graduated college, I know you can study for a test. I don't need to know that. Even if you didn't graduate college, it's still not a very important thing. So I think we take a more practical approach to it. So the way we do that is, start off with an introduction call with a member of the team, and that's getting to know you, getting, selling the company, hopefully, telling you what's exciting about WeFunder. And then you actually ask for a work sample. So this is something that you've done in the past, whether it's like an open source project, just a personal thing that you're tinkering on, anything like that, and like share it with us so we can take a look at it. And then we'll have an hour with a couple members of the engineering team to talk about your project, to ask questions about why did you design it this way? Why did you architect it this way? Can you talk about like how you would make improvements, add features, make changes? Hey, look, I found a bug. There's a massive gaping SQL injection here. Did you know that? How would you fix that? Just things like that. It's definitely more practical, but I think much more revealing about like how like the skills that what skills do you have that you actually use in your day-to-day basis, rather than just reversing a linked list, which okay, but when are you going to reverse a linked list? Probably not very often. So if all goes well there, then we have one final step, which is to, uh, obviously at the moment, not quite an on-site, it's a virtual on-site, where we like to spend a full day with someone working on a project together in like a pair programming co-working situation, where you actually get to work a little bit with our actual code base, see it warts and all, and build a feature out. And knowing of course that like it's a big ask to like ask someone to dive into a totally unfamiliar code base and like be productive within an hour, but also to spend like that much time with someone for an interview is kind of a big ask. So we do pay people like a contract rate for that time,
That's cool.
because we want to show more than just like, I want to do more than say I value your time. I want to show you that I actually do value your time, and this is not just some shady way for us to get features built for free. So it's something that I think is a really good way of seeing a candidate in action, and for a candidate to like see what it's like working with WeFunder. We try to simulate an average day, and then that's it. You spend a little time with the CTO, you spend a little time with the CEO, and hopefully there's an offer on the table, and you're now a WeFunder employee and doing some very cool things and helping some very cool companies.
That's awesome. So one of the, I mean, I don't even know if it's a hot take anymore that data structures and algorithm questions, but like still so many people default to it. So it's
I
good.
mean, I could probably talk all day about this, but I won't.
So I'm curious too. I think one of the things from the outside that makes WeFunder unique, and one of the reasons that I ended up finding out about like WeFunder as a whole was I have worked with Justin Renfro, who does I think partnerships or something in biz dev with WeFunder and has for a while. And so one of the things that I was like, hey, what are you up to these days? And he was like, oh, I'm on a train for work going across the country.
Yeah,
And so I think one of the things that makes WeFunder amazing is your guys' culture and all the unique things that you do that I haven't heard any other company do. So you want to kind of dive into some of the unique things about your guys' culture?
absolutely. And it's definitely one of the reasons that, when I'm actually relatively new to the company, right? I joined maybe 8 months ago.
Okay.
So kind of the interview process for me is kind of relatively recent in my memory. And, one of the things I was looking for in considering what company I'd want to join is, I think culture is incredibly important. This is where you're going to be spending a lot of your time. It's the people you're going to be spending your time with. And I've definitely had experiences in the past that are very much not ideal. We'll leave it at that. And as a side note, I think it's also like, in a way, I'm glad I have, because
Definitely.
just as a learning experience, both I have a better idea of what to look for now, and also, as an engineering leader, I don't always know what to do, but I definitely know what I shouldn't do, and I think that's maybe 90% of the battle sometimes. Um, but anyway, the culture of WeFunder was, I think, just so appealing. It's of course hard to know in an interview where you only get somewhere between 1 to 10 hours with a company to suss that out. So it's as a candidate, it's very difficult to really evaluate that. But everything I saw was very positive, and I'm happy to report that I think that has held true as I've now spent the last 8 months with the company, and it's just an amazing group of people. I love everyone I work with. It's obviously been kind of challenging in this past year because I don't know if you noticed, things are a little abnormal in the past year, but even still, we didn't get to do a train trip this year, but we've done things like meeting up in parks and doing socially distanced things like that. We also, the SEC had major rule changes back in March that were actually very positive for us as a business, but also meant there was kind of a big, it was a big challenge kind of leading up to that, to have all of our ducks in a row for that rule change. So back in March, we actually rented a bunch of cabins in Tahoe and then just quarantined together there, which was, I think, definitely a wonderful change of pace from the monotony of the little box that I spend my day in at home every day. And also just a great opportunity to actually spend some time with the team. I'm I think so. I think there's definitely it's not for everyone, right? It does take a certain kind of person to spend 2 weeks on a train traveling around the company or around the country, talking to founders of companies, our customers, our investors, and learning what it's like, not just here in the Valley, but throughout America, from everywhere from the red estate to the blue estate. And it takes a certain kind of person to actually enjoy doing that, spending that 2 weeks trapped on a train with your coworkers, or spending a couple weeks trapped in a cabin in Tahoe with your coworkers. But I think it's I love it. And I think it's definitely a pretty unique aspect of the company. So yeah, if that's appealing to you, come work for us.
There's I'm just gonna read like 2 or 3 of the highlights from your website that I found of benefits that I have not read on any other particular company's websites. So this one's not as uncommon, but there's no judgment if you need a quick afternoon nap. I appreciated that one. And then the 3 month sabbatical after 3 years of service, you get 3 paid months off. And then once a year, team goes somewhere cool. We kind of covered that one. And then classes you can take and unlimited PTO. And if you don't take any PTO, which can happen for unlimited vacation people, you have to take at least 3 weeks off. So there was definitely a unique culture and kind of vibe to what it is that, like, kind of live your life, help us build this company together. And as we do, we're all going to have some fun.
Yeah, and I think that all kind of like there's a theme there, which is I think we like to invest in people, which is I think I mean it's great, and it's both in terms of like all the benefits you're talking about, but also definitely when we find junior talent who maybe doesn't have a whole lot on their resume, but they're very exciting, they're very smart, they're very driven. Like we like to give those people a chance when we can, and invest in them and turn them into hopefully awesome contributors on the team. And in fact, I think about like half of our engineering team kind of fits that description right now, of people who were very junior but very promising, and went through our internship program and landed in a place where they're now like kind of just awesome people who are getting things done every single day as just members of the engineering team. So that's just I think another thing that I really love about the company is like it's more than just saying we invest in our people. We're showing it and doing it.
What are you guys doing now that things are going to start probably opening up over the next 6 to 12 months? Is most of your team in San Francisco, or are they going to plan on working remote, or what are kind of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so and again, like as someone relatively new and joined in the middle of quarantine,
Right.
this is not something I exactly have direct experience with, but my understanding is historically we very much like people to be in the office. But kind of one of the things that the CEO is just that kind of guy who likes people there. And I think there's definitely a certain amount of energy you get from being in the office. Of course, like I think the past year has definitely like changed things, and we're going to have to adapt to that one way or another. So at the moment we actually like we don't have an office, because why pay for something that we're not actually using?
Sure.
But we are going to be getting a new one somewhere in San Francisco, and a good portion of the team is here. But we also have people all throughout the country, both people who were here and kind of moved somewhere else during quarantine, and also we have a contingent in Europe that's working on some of our engineering stuff. And we're also that segues into another wonderful point, which is the EU is rolling out similar regulations to what enables WeFunder to work in the US. So that those go live in November, which is also very exciting and very terrifying at the same time.
That's pretty cool.
So I think we'll be opening an office in Europe as well. So the answer to your question is like, I think like a lot of people, we haven't really figured out exactly what reopening is going to look like. And it's certainly, I think, we know that a lot of people are, done with commuting and never want to do it again. And I certainly understand that. So, I think it'll definitely be a hybrid model of, if you're super awesome and want to work remotely, like we're happy to have you. And if you love being, in an office, we will have an office for you to come to. And if you want to do a little bit of both, do a little bit of both.
Awesome. Is there anything else that I did not cover about WeFunder that you wanted to add for those that are wondering about what it'd like to be what it would be like to join the team?
Yeah, so I guess I could talk a little bit about some of the projects coming up that we're working on the engineering side. As I was mentioned with the EU rollout, that's kind of a big one. We have a code base right now that assumes everything's in dollars, and that needs to change. Dealing with euros, that's a project. Taking the front end and localizing it, making it accessible to the whole European market, that'll be another thing. dealing with the payments infrastructure behind all of that, and plugging into how EU payments work. That's another very, very exciting thing. It's actually very interesting. WeFunder has a lot of its in-house payments infrastructure, and when I first joined the company, I actually kind of wondered, like, why? Like, Stripe exists, why?
Right, and they do a pretty good job.
Yeah. As it turns out, like, there are good reasons for it. And in large part, it's SEC regulations. To some degree, require us to do it the way we do it, and we can't just use an off-the-shelf solution. So I think that there's a lot of really interesting stuff, whether you're like product focused and want to work on the stuff that's directly interfacing with users and our founders, or if that kind of like back end of payments and finance is like super interesting. Like we've got a lot of stuff going on there too. So yeah, those are, I think, like, there's definitely a lot to do, and it's like I said, terrifying, exciting, and I'm so excited for what we're going to be doing over the coming months.
And my theory is that as things continue to go well in the space, government will continually change the rules, probably in favor of your users. So I don't think you're going to be bored anytime soon.
I hope not.
Awesome. Well, those are all the questions I had. So I appreciate you coming on today and sharing that with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Jeff. This is really great.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Thanks again for listening to this episode of Chasing Squirrels. That link again is bit.ly/3GX7Q4W. That will get the process started by setting up your 15-minute phone interview with your salary requirements and any additional questions you may have. And after that, we'll forward you on to Josh and the WeFunder team. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to subscribe.